Welcome back to the show. Today I've titled the show, Eating the Elephant. Relax, relax. I'm not talking about literally eating the elephant. I'm not talking about this guy right here. I'm using this as an analogy, so just be aware. I love elephants. We're going to talk about elephants here in a few minutes. But I think the point that I'm trying to share here today will hopefully give you some tools that can help you in your own life. So Desmond Tutu said one time, there's only one way to eat an elephant. You've heard the saying, I'm sure. One bite at a time. We're going to talk about today priorities and getting stuff done. But first, while we are talking about elephants, let me just share some information for your own sake. Both African and Asian elephants are female-led. They're tight-knit groups consisting of a dominant matriarch, a dominant female. Her female offspring and the other relations plus her calves. Occasionally, groups will sometimes allow strangers to join them, so they live in groups and making individuals, I think, a lot safer and allows them more time for caring and teaching their young. If you just stop and think about that for just a second. Now, elephants, they have big brains, for sure. They communicate in very specific ways, for sure. But they have a system that they've established through thousands and millions of years that has worked for them. Let me kind of share some more information. Elephants can recognize themselves in mirrors. Scientists believe this is a sign of, as one person said, greater self-awareness. In fact, in one study, an Asian elephant called Happy repeatedly touched an X painted on her forehead while looking in the mirror. It was an indication, some people say, that she knew what she was looking at, that she knew it was her in the mirror. Elephants have amazing long-term memories. Scientists studying 3 herds of elephants in Tanzania found that during a lengthy drought, the 2 herds, led by an older female, left the drought area in search for water. And more females remembered that drought as well. And in fact, that drought occurred 30 years earlier. But the elephant knew exactly where to go. Another study says that elephants appear to understand what other elephants are feeling. Stop about that. Just stop for just a second. Elephants appear to understand what other elephants are feeling. The human word for that is called empathy. Another human word for that is called compassion. Some people now call that emotional intelligence, EI, emotional intelligence. That might be for another show. Experiments show that when one elephant is unhappy, others share their feelings. Something known as, somebody called it, emotional contagion. Emotional contagion. In these situations, they'll go over to their friend and comfort them, often by putting their trunk into another's mouth, something that elephants find reassuring. Also, elephants will also assist other injured elephants and even appear to mourn their dead. Now, we're talking about elephants here today for sure, but we're talking about priorities and what's important and how do you get stuff done. When I was younger, I would get really frustrated by the size and the enormity of a task, whatever that task was, whether it was a task to learn a new song on the piano or a new market in the business that I was in at the time. I would be overwhelmed with it. So I wouldn't understand, at least back then, that truly successful people take little bites at a time, if you will, to get a lot of stuff done. I think maybe in your life, you've been through situations in your own life where you see the enormity of what's going on and fail to realize that some of the situations that you're in can be overcome by taking little bits and pieces of it to overcome what you're trying to go through in your life. Winston Churchill said one time, he said, success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. It is the courage to continue that counts. If you read history, you will see that during Winston Churchill's time, he overcame some substantial struggles. Now, did he go from 0 to 100 miles an hour immediately? Of course not. He was able to go through certain situations in his life, learn from those situations, push through some of the most embarrassing and humiliating struggles he had in his life in order, in some people's eyes, to be recognized and honored by one of the greatest leaders in Great Britain some years ago. We're talking about eating the elephant. We're talking about achieving certain things in your life one bite at a time, one struggle at a time. Thomas Edison said one time, many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Let me share it again. Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Some people say that Thomas Edison tried over 1,000 times to invent the light bulb, the incandescent light bulb. 1,000 or more attempts. I think you and I may have given up after attempts, pick a number, 20, 40, 150, 300, 500. We would have quit. But he consistently learned from what he was doing, adjusted a little bit, invented a little more, attempted to invent a little more, and eventually, I can't remember how long it took him to achieve that, but he eventually invented the incandescent light bulb. Winston Churchill again said one time, success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. Do you know how hard it is to go from failure to failure and not lose enthusiasm? You know how difficult it is to keep getting up when you don't feel like getting up at all. In fact, there are some sports teams that I know of that have had a season or two, maybe more, that were not very good. In fact, they were quite bad, quite disastrous. But it's interesting that the managers, the leaders of these teams understand that it's just a matter of time when they continue to tweak, when they continue to practice, when they continue to get better every day, that one day they're going to be on top. If you study any kind of sports, if you go back to the stats, you're going to see that there are some teams that reach the top only because they just didn't quit. They kept getting better and better every day. That's how you eat an elephant, or that's how you take on any huge task. You take it in small bits. In fact, somebody said, how do you eat a bicycle? Eat a bicycle? I wouldn't recommend it. They said you eat a bicycle one little tiny piece at a time. Mary Ann Radmacher wrote, courage doesn't always soar. Courage doesn't always soar. Sometimes courage is the little voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. Let me share it again. Mary Ann Radmacher. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is that little voice at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. I shared on a show a while ago how there are some teachers who help people lift weights that they push them to go past failure, meaning that they teach them how to lift a weight past the point that they think that they can lift it. Because that's where muscle is really developed. That's where muscle is really torn in order for you to build bulk in your life. Now, does that equate over to what I'm sharing here today? I really think so. I think you and I, maybe in the past, maybe today, maybe yesterday, have chosen to stop before we reached our maximum in order to achieve something that we really in our hearts want to achieve, but we get tired of lifting, we get tired of pushing, we get tired of doing the things that it takes to be extraordinary. Because extraordinary just doesn't happen, does it? Extraordinary happens over a course of time. So when you stop and start the process of learning and getting better, guess what happens every time you stop? You don't just stop and stay where you are, you regress back a little bit more, back to the place where you were. So the longer you stay stationary, the longer you stop, apathy kicks in, and then you start regressing. Some religious people call it backsliding. You tend to backslide, you tend to go backwards to the place where you first started, and now you're back at square one when at the point you stopped, you were at step 6, and then you didn't keep moving, so you kept going back and back and back. So then you have to start all over again. And then all that time is wasted, all those days, weeks, years are wasted because you stopped. It's really important that you can't stop, even though that eating the elephant is maybe a little intimidating. Maybe you look up at the elephant and you say, how can I possibly overtake this big beast, whatever the beast is, or the task or the goal or the mission or the education or the job or the goal, whatever it is. It looks so big and so huge. But when you really break it down to small, tiny bits, it's not that big. Walt Disney said one time, he said, the way to get started is quit talking and begin doing. Again, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. What I've learned over the years that people like Walt Disney and thousands of other people that have achieved some extraordinary results have chosen to surround themselves with people that are smarter than them. Think about that for just a second. They've chosen to surround themselves with people that are smarter than them. You're going to say, well, John, I heard that I should be the smartest person that I know. Big mistake, big mistake. When you walk into any room, you do not want to be the smartest person in the room. That's what I've learned over the years. Again, I sit on the shoulders of giants as far as education and information goes. But I've learned over the years that if I really want to get anywhere faster than slower, I need to hang around people that are smarter than I am. So several people, billionaires, have said and written about that it's critical that if you want to get somewhere in life, you have to choose not to be the smartest person in your life, so that now you're the king of the hill and you have the crown and you're the leader and all this, and you supposedly have all the answers. That's a huge mistake, huge mistake. Because if you don't have people investing in you and you don't go researching out information and surround yourself with people that can leverage your weak points, and guess what? You got them. You've got a lot of weak points. And guess what? I've got a lot of weak points too. But I have surrounded myself with people that are strong in areas that can enable me to climb higher because I'm leveraging their strengths. Instead of thinking that I have to have all the answers. I don't have to have all the pieces of a puzzle in order to make the puzzle beautiful. I have to bring people into my life that have pieces of the puzzle that will contribute the pieces to the puzzle that will turn out to be a beautiful piece of art. And maybe you need to do the same thing. But if you don't go out and recruit those people and locate those people and learn from those people, then guess what? You're only going to reach so high. And you're never going to be able to eat the elephant because the task is going to be so big and there's not enough people in your life that's going to help you achieve some really cool things. Albert Einstein said one time, and you know who Albert Einstein is, he said, genius is 1% talent and 99% hard work. Again, genius is 1% talent and 99% hard work. He said one time, I can't remember the exact quote, and my loose paraphrase of his quote is, he wasn't the smartest person, but he chose to work harder than most people. But you would look at him from the outside. I look at him all the time on paper and his words. Man, this guy's brilliant. He's achieved all this great stuff. But out of his own mouth, allegedly, he said that he wasn't the smartest guy around. He just chose to work harder than most people. Now that, I think, deserves some elaboration. There are a lot of people in the world that think that getting somewhere in life doesn't require a ton of consistent hard work. I have not found that to be true. I found that anybody who's wanted to achieve anything great has busted their tail longer than anybody in their life, or almost anybody in their lives, except for the peers and the mentors and the leaders that they have, as I mentioned earlier, that are developing them and helping them climb their mountain. H.G. Wells, the great author back from 60 plus years ago, he said, if you fell down yesterday, stand up today. That's something that as a young person I didn't get. Maybe I wasn't the brightest bulb in the drawer, maybe I'm still not the brightest bulb in the drawer. But I would suggest to you that when you fall down, which you will, and I do consistently, that when you fall down, the best way to keep going is to get back up quickly. Hear me. When you fall down, which you will, like I said, I'll say this multiple times in this show, the longer you stay down, the harder it is to get back up again. I was sick once upon a time in the last few years. I don't know what it was, the flu or something, for several days. And just being out of the gym for 3 or 4 days or whatever it was, I noticed a change. I noticed a difference. I noticed it's at least in my own mind, a lot weaker because I hadn't maintained the daily or almost daily routine of going to the gym. That kind of can be expanded in your own life, that if you're not consistent in developing yourself, it's going to be very easy to regress back into a situation where it's going to be much harder for you to get stronger. Leonardo da Vinci said one time, at least it was alleged that he said this, "It has long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment, listen, rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things." They went out and happened to things. Years ago, I worked for this insurance firm. The office I was in is in Maryland, and they have other offices scattered around the United States, but this other office that I'm talking about is in Georgia. And they had a sales rep there who did not have an education. He could not read or write, but he consistently, month after month, year after year, made 6 figures every single year. He couldn't read or he couldn't write. You say, John, how is that possible? Well, the quick answer of that is that he outworked 95% of the average people in the company. Hear me. He outworked 95% of the people in the company. How did he eat his elephant? He outworked 95% of the people in the company. Now that pattern, that system, that mindset is historical. Thousands of years, people who have achieved anything substantial have consistently worked harder than the average human being that they're around. So if that system has been in place for thousands of years, why cannot that system work for you today? To outwork everybody in your life, or almost everybody in your life, so that one day you're going to wake up and realize that you've reached a level of success that 95 to 98% of your peers have no clue about, because they're not willing to pay the price. They're not willing to take a bite of the elephant one piece at a time. Teddy Roosevelt said one time, he said, "Courage is not having the strength to go on. It is going on when you don't have the strength." Let me share that again. Courage is not having the strength to go on. It's going on when you don't have the strength. I read one time that singer Barbra Streisand at that time had stage fright really, really bad. Now, you would look at Barbra Streisand. If you don't know her, look her up. Barbra Streisand. She has a voice that's just extraordinary. And you would think that when she walked out on stage that she had all her crap together and everything was practically perfect in every way. But then when you read her bio and read the behind-the-scenes stories, she had serious, serious butterflies in her stomach. She was anxious. She was afraid. She was intimidated. But she chose to push herself to do something that she knew that she was really good at, even though she was scared out of her mind. I know of a number of successful people who have stage fright, who have anxieties, who have phobias, that are afraid of doing certain things, but they know that if they don't do these things consistently, they'll never eat the elephant. They'll never achieve the extraordinary because they're choosing to take the easy way and not pushing themselves beyond what they think they can possibly do. Taylor Swift, the singer and multimillionaire, said, "Fearlessness is getting back up and fighting for what you want over and over and over again, even though every time you've tried before, you've lost." Let me share that again. Taylor Swift. Fearless is getting back up and fighting for what you want over and over again, even though every time you've tried before, you've lost. There was a great boxing match several years ago, and the boxers were in the ring, and one boxer had pummeled the other boxer, and knocked the other boxer down. And this is going through several rounds, and he was exhausted. While he lay down on the mat, he really considered, I'm bleeding, I'm bruised, I'm done. This other guy, he's definitely a champion, and I don't necessarily think I can get up again. But what the crowd didn't know, remember that word, what the crowd didn't know is that a couple days before that, his mother passed away. And before his mother passed away, he promised his mother that he was going to win that fight. So what did he do? He got back up, even though he was bruised and beaten and bleeding. And he got up, he mustered the strength inside him because his why, the promise to his mama, was bigger than the bruises, was more important than the blood, was more important than the pain. His why was bigger than his exhaustion laying down on the mat. He rose to his feet, mustered up the strength and courage to get back fighting again, and eventually he knocked out the other guy who knocked him out, and then he eventually won the match. Now think about that in your own life. You've been knocked down over and over again. You've had people plant seeds in your mind that were destructive. You've had people speak into your life that they clearly did not know that they did not know. You've had people that tried to trap you up. You've had people that have tried to play mind games with you, and you've believed those lies for an extended period of time. But they don't know your heart. They don't know your passion. So back to the example of this boxer, his why gave him the courage to get back up again. Now, I'm not suggesting that you take up boxing to learn this skill. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that you develop whys in your life that will enable you to keep taking steps forward. I shared recently with somebody that I have to have many whys that I give myself every day in order to do some of the things that I feel that I need to do every day. I'm not going to get into the behind the scenes of that too much because it gets me all emotional and stuff. But if you don't create the many whys in your life, you might need more than 2 or 3 or 4 daily in order to push you through some of the most discouraging times that you have in your life. James Michener wrote, "Character consists of what you do on the 3rd and the 4th tries." Again, character consists of what you do on the 3rd and 4th tries. You know how tempting it is to just say, okay, universe, I guess I'm not wired to do this, or I'm not destined to achieve this thing, or I'm destined not to eat this elephant. But maybe the universe is saying to you, do you want to eat the elephant bad enough? Do you want to achieve your specific goal bad enough? Are you hungry enough? Are you willing enough? Are you willing to pay the price enough? Because those people who are willing to pay the price enough and more times eventually get somewhere somehow. But to get from A to Z is hell. I'll be quite blunt with you. It is hell. It is horrible. It is going through a period of your life that you wish you wouldn't be in, but you know that for you, how you're wired and where you come from, if you don't go through that hell and that fire, that you're not going to reach this point. Is it fun? There's no way it's fun. I tell you right now, it is. I normally don't use bad words on the show, and I'm not going to do one today, but it is messed up. I'll put it that way. It is horrible to go through this pain. But if you do not go through some things in your life consistently, like the inventors, like the sports people, like the movie stars, they weren't born on top. They weren't. They went through some really, really bad times for a lot of years to get where they need to be. J.M. Barrie wrote one time, "We are all failures, at least the best of us are." Again, we are all failures, at least the best of us are. Because the people who have achieved some level of success in some form understand that failures and failings are two maybe different concepts, right? Because if you're not willing to fail more times than the average person, you're not going to eat the elephant. You're not going to achieve great things in your life. You're not going to do things that are extraordinary because you're not willing to pay the price. I'm asking you today to pay the price. You know, when I was a kid, my parents had the opportunity to take us to the Grand Canyon several times, thankfully. And in the Grand Canyon, you see at the bottom the river that has cut through, some say, the canyon. You're going to find, if you study water, that if you have enough water flowing through rock, eventually the water is going to erode the rock. It's going to smooth the rock. Wait a minute, John. Rock is harder than water. Right. But the persistence of the water, the consistency of the water eventually erodes the rock. Now, does that mirror to what I'm sharing here today? You bet it does. Your consistency, your flow, without stopping, will eventually erode away the things that are in your way. But you got to be consistent. You got to be proactive, because if you're not proactive, you're not going anywhere in life. So I'm going to end with a quote by Samuel Smiles. He said, "Sow a thought and you reap an act. Sow an act and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character, and sow a character and you reap a destiny." Thanks for watching. My name's John Carver, and we'll be back real soon.